Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Sandy Springs, Georgia, it's time for Sandy Springs Business Radio. Now, here's your host.
Lee Kantor here with Rachel Simon, another episode of Sandy Springs Business Radio, and this one is brought to you by Connect the Dots Digital. When you're ready to leverage LinkedIn to meet your business goals, go to connectthedots.digital. Welcome, Rachel.
Hi, Lee. How are you?
I am doing well. So excited about this show. You got a great guest.
Yes, and we're back in the studio.
Yeah, that's
Hooray.
a big deal.
Yeah, we have a great guest. I'm super excited about this conversation. So I'm really happy to welcome Adam Bieber with Logic Speak. Nice to meet you.
Rachel, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be with both of you today. I really appreciate it and excited to chat.
Y'all, he's a pro. We're going to have a great conversation here. So let's just kick it off. Tell us a little bit about you, your company, what you do.
Sure. Yeah. Well, like you said, my name's Adam Bieber. I am the Director of Business Development for a managed IT and cybersecurity company local to the North Metro Atlanta area. We've been in business for 20 years. We serve small to medium businesses, providing technology, support, technology strategy and planning, and all the things that need to be considered when it comes to how you do business, how you interact online, protecting your digital assets, cybersecurity, all of that fun stuff. So I get to go and meet with prospective clients, meet with existing clients, hear what's happening, hear from them, work on building relationships, and bring them in to work with us and hopefully to drive their business forward.
It's interesting. I was just talking with somebody recently about the change. We were talking about another industry that's has sort of shifted the way IT has, because I remember back in my early career, there was the IT guy who had to do all the things, right? He had to deal with the servers, and then everything from dealing with the servers to helping, the older, potentially less computer savvy people figure out how to use their mouse. Yep.
Or how to hook up to the printer.
Or exactly. Yeah. So it seems like today companies are really doing more with outsourcing those IT services.
Yeah. The reality is, as technology evolves and as business evolves, every company, whether they like it or not, is a technology company. And so I always say, whether you have a digital footprint or data to protect, you're a good client for us. And really, that's anybody. Everybody's got data to protect. Everybody's got a digital footprint, and they need to consider those things more on the side of cyber threat, cybersecurity, protecting their data, not just their data, but their clients' data. And so it has evolved from, just the guy that sets up the printer and fixes the server. What does that even mean? To
is there even a server?
Yeah, exactly. So now we do a lot of that virtually. We utilize the Microsoft Azure cloud to be able to spin up virtual servers and be able to serve businesses so that if there were some type of catastrophic event to their brick and mortar, they're still able to operate and conduct business. And then, putting in all the puzzle pieces that they need to make sure that they have access to all the applications and files and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So, it's evolved.
Is there a certain industry that you all work with?
Yeah, that's a good question. We tend to work with professional services the most. So that's going to be like your financial advisory firms, CPA firms, lawyers, things like that. We also work a lot locally with engineering firms. Our founder's wife actually owns an engineering company. And so through that network, we've been able to serve a lot of the engineering firms in the area. We're also part of a couple associations that focus on that vertical. Nonprofits and churches, kind of the tagline at the end of our mission statement is to have a positive impact on the community. And so we love to give back to churches and nonprofits that are doing good things in the community that we can support and protect. So usually they're 20 or so employees or greater. That's kind of where we found our sweet spot to be. And then usually when you're in that realm, you're looking at 3 to 5 million in revenue or greater. And that's where we can come in and really do a lot of good things within a healthy budget to be able to support. So
now, part of your backstory is you help companies with culture. Why is culture important to you, and why is it important to firms that you serve? Yeah,
I love that question. It is incredibly crucial. the way that I think about culture is less about what you do and more about how you feel about what you do. And it's interesting. There's so many different data points that you could pull out. And it seems to be a hot topic right now, but people care about the environment that they're going into work. And sometimes people will take less money for a better culture, or make a lateral move that's not necessarily up the corporate ladder in order to be in a better environment. And so to me, it's crucial. But what I like talking about is how it doesn't matter what position you have in the organization, you can impact and affect the culture. And so what I like to talk about through some of my consulting on that side, but also through the podcast that I have, is about maximizing your influence and impact so that anybody can make a difference in the culture that they're a part of.
Now, do you find that culture is one of those things? My background's in marketing, so I look at it through the lens
Sure.
of marketing. When it comes to branding, it's one of those things that are going to happen whether you put energy into it or not.
Yeah.
People are going to have an opinion about your brand, whether you've been kind of mindful about it or
Yes.
not. Is culture the same thing that if you ignore culture, a culture is going to develop without any of your input, and so you might as well invest resources into it?
Yep, 100%. I love that you drew that parallel between the marketing industry and culture. I often say culture's formed either by design or by default. And so the default settings, when you get a new laptop or a new electronic, usually the default settings are not enough. You got to tweak, you got to customize, you got to build it or customize it the way that you want that thing to operate. And the same goes for your culture. When you design it, you're actually being proactive about how you create it and develop it. And I've just been so blessed. LogicSpeak already had such a healthy, thriving culture. So I felt like I got to step into an organization that truly lived and breathed what it was that I was so passionate about.
Do you think in the culture, it's such an interesting word, right? Because people
Sure.
have, it's one of those words I think that when you hear it within the work context, it either is like, yes, or ugh. But sometimes, do you see that companies kind of use it as a crutch of why they can't innovate? Like, oh, that's not our culture. That's not the way we do things here.
I see it more as a justification for toxic behavior.
Yeah.
And so, we're just a culture that works really, really hard. Well, that's not a justifiable answer when you're talking to someone that just put in a 70-hour week. That's not healthy. And so I see it more on that aspect of not being willing to make changes and kind of own up to the design that you have for your culture if it is toxic. And so that can be a really hard thing to change. And what I've found is it has to start at the top. There has to be buy-in from the executive level down in order for people to really jump on board and get involved. And unfortunately, it's uncomfortable. Like growth is uncomfortable, change is uncomfortable. I've been involved in really fast-paced growing companies where it seemed like every week there was a new process and a new way of doing things, and the change was so stinking uncomfortable. But that kept us on our toes and that kept us moving and growing. And I like to use the image of like either a river or a stagnant pond. That stagnant pond grows a ton of bacteria, has a bunch of nasty pollen. We're in the South. The pollen just sits on the top of it. It's gross. It's disgusting. It's not safe to drink. But when you think about a river that moves and that filters through rocks, that is constantly rushing, that has power and strength, you have cleaner water. And so that's just kind of how I think about culture and growth and all that.
That's a great analogy, actually. Like, I mean, especially again since I can absolutely picture that gross stagnant pond covered in nasty pollen that you would never let your dog get in. Like, don't get in there. Yeah, it's so interesting the way, again, there is like definitely that level of hesitation and fear when change needs to happen.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that pretty much anything that is worth building and growing has to start at the top.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's really, really hard to actually make it happen and make it happen successfully.
Yeah, no, 100%. as a leader by title, it's your job to rally the people that work with you and work under you, to head in whatever direction and execute. And it's not just about executing the business; it's about doing it in a way that builds the people. And so when everybody can be on the same page and they can work together and they trust each other, there's a high level of trust involved. You can see some really amazing things. I've seen people that are super trustworthy and may not be the most polished looking salesperson, and they are more successful because they are trustworthy and they have that grit and they execute and they know the culture, versus the person that just has, the suave or, the look, or the, maybe they came from the bigger school or what have you.
Yeah.
Now, what are some kind of symptoms that a company's culture might be not on the right path? Is it like something like, we're having trouble hiring, or is it come down to sales where, our sales have plateaued? Are there some kind of warning signs for organizations you could share?
Yeah. I mean, I think probably the biggest one is retention, employee retention. That says a lot about an organization. If you've done any job searching or had to go through the process of applying for jobs, one of the things I always encourage people that are in that season is to take a look at some of the other factors, not just how many positions do they have to fill, but look at how long they've been hiring for that role. Like, maybe go look at some of the people that have that role and look at how long they've been at the company. Reach out to them on LinkedIn. Ask them, hey, what do you think? I'm seriously considering applying. I've had people in previous roles reach out to me and just say, hey, we don't know each other, but we're connected. I see that you work here. You've been here for 2 years. You've been here for 3 years. What are your thoughts? Can you give it to me straight? And I think we need to do more of that, because employee retention is a big indicator on the health of the organization and the health of the culture. Also, I think people sometimes blow it up on social media, where they present themselves in one way, and say on LinkedIn, the company does, and the people that work at the company. But then when you get one-on-one with someone, you realize that is not at all how it looks and how it happens. That's always a red flag for me. I was just having a conversation this morning with someone who's worked at a big company in the area, and I said, is the hype real? Like, I know it. I've seen it. I've been aware of the company. And she just said, for what I was doing, no, it's not. And I was like, wow. So yeah, maybe those are a couple indicators.
That's interesting. The hype, like, meaning what they're presenting on their company page as being like,
and just
great.
As employees,
we have a ping pong table.
Yeah. We do beer Fridays and get pizza at the end of the quarter. Like,
that's very interesting. Yeah, because obviously LinkedIn is something I talk about a lot.
Sure.
And it's so important for people to actually present what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, to your point, it's not really the reality of what it is like to be an employee at that company.
Sure. And I encourage people that are building their personal brand on LinkedIn. I tell them, I'm like, look, you can look at what everybody else is doing, but just sound like yourself. Mm-hmm. Like, if you don't sound like yourself on that online presence, it just feels fake. I've had plenty of conversations where somebody's got this loud personality through the keyboard, and then when you're sitting down one-on-one, it's hard to hold the conversation, and you're going, wait, I'm just confused. You're not who I thought you were. And it may not be any detriment to their character. It just gives you an unsettling feeling of like, okay, I'm just confused. So I always just tell people, I'm like, if that's not you, don't be that person. Just be yourself, and who you are will resonate with the right people.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I completely agree. I think that that's one of the big challenges for people who are trying to build their brand on LinkedIn, is they forget that. And I was just, again, talking about this yesterday, with a B2B company, and they're like, well, we're B2B and we're trying to present this, corporate, vision of who we are. And
sure.
I'm like, but ultimately you are still selling to a human being.
Yeah, you're people selling to people.
Right.
Yep.
You're just a business selling to a person in another business.
Yep.
Not a consumer. Yep. So we got to remember the humanity piece.
Oh, and the farther upstream I think you go, the loss in communication, like the bigger gap that happens there, where it's just, hey, I'm the vendor. All I'm doing is just, trying to get the renewals and the transactions, and they keep it very transactional. It's like, no, like the downstream person that is also a business owner, they care a lot about their business. It's their baby. It's their, their life's work. It's their legacy. So talk to them like that. Treat them like a human being. So.
Now, is there any exercises or any activities you can share for an organization to help kind of, number one, safeguard against that incongruity where they might be thinking there's something that they're not and how the public is perceiving them? Is there anything you can share that can give somebody something actionable today to say, hey, we're a little off the mark here. Let's do this so that we can be better?
Yeah. To me, it comes back to the trust of the human beings on the team. If there's no trust between people, then no team building exercise in one day is going to get you there. That's something that has to be cultivated and built. And so if you're leading, one team of 3 people, or you're over a couple of teams or a division or an entire group, as the leader, my encouragement would be find ways to connect with your people personally. And I think like that's a whole nother subject. That could be a whole nother podcast. People say, check your, personal stuff at the door. Like, no, we're human beings. Going back to that point. If you have a really horrible morning and you just got some really difficult news, you're going to wear, I'm an emotional person. I wear that on my face. So people know if there's something going on. Cultivate personal connections, personal touch points, be consistent, honor what you say you're going to do. And it doesn't have to be this crazy big transformation. Like if for like very practical action steps, I always encourage leaders when I'm talking to them, like build into your routine, either weekly or bi-weekly touch points with your team, and spend 10 minutes of that meeting just connecting with them personally. How's it going? How are you? How's your family? What sports are your kids in? And be genuine about it. Ask questions. Be curious. Get into some of the business stuff. Get into, hey, this is where I see you going. This is where you're headed. Change up the way that you do your one-on-ones. Cultivate trust with your team. It's hard to do it in an instant, but over time, you start to build this rapport and this trust, and that trust turns into loyalty. It's loyalty to the leader. It's loyalty to the brand, loyalty to the company, and people want to stick around for loyal bosses and loyal people. So, it's kind of hard to just say do this one thing, but that would be where I would start.
Great.
Yeah, no, it is really kind of just going back to basics, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that sometimes, especially as like organizations get bigger and bigger, they put this distance between the top and the leadership and the people kind of lower down. But we have to remember that everybody is showing up to work for a common goal, right? To move the business, the goals of that organization forward. So, no, that's so interesting because you've got so many different aspects of like what you do professionally, right? You've got like your full-time job, your consultancy, you're also like a LinkedIn super user. So tell us a little bit about like what inspired you to start to build your brand. Yeah.
So I can actually relate it back. There's a gentleman who I don't think would care that I use his name because he's in this greater Atlanta area. His name's Peter Pasternak. And the company that I worked for with him, they were doing remodels and home renovations. And this was like in my early 20s. And every time I would see him, he would ask me, Adam, did you build your network today? And I would look at him and be like, no, dude, I'm like wearing boots and I'm on this job site. Like, no, I didn't build. And he would just say, build your network today. And then I watched him and the way he cultivated relationships, and they would do this real estate networking event that actually still happens, which is really cool. And I think they just celebrated 14 or 16 years. And I credit it back to him. He saw the value of building a network, cultivating relationships. And so that's when I started. It was years ago, and I just wanted to connect with people and try to build and cultivate relationships. And I've seen in different seasons and stages of my life, and then kind of the growth trajectory of my career, it has been such a joy and a benefit to be able to know so many great people, be connected to so many amazing people, support my friends that start businesses, support other creators and entrepreneurs, and really really build each other up. And that's something that I've just loved about the networking world, the LinkedIn world. And when I launched my podcast almost 3 years ago, it gave me an immediate audience that was ready to hear more of my thoughts, ideas, and passions. And so it's just been fun to be able to do that and share the things that I'm passionate about with others.
Can you think of a story of like a result of what you've kind of put into LinkedIn? You know, like, I mean, there's probably a great, even if it's, because I can think of so many different ways of, over the years where been able to connect this person with this person and it results in this, right?
Yeah. I would just say like some of the coolest relationships, and there's been several very recently, like this year. I think out of the 6 most recent podcast guests, 3 of them were just LinkedIn connections that I met over LinkedIn, saw their content, believed in who they were, got to know them just because of their presence. And, going through the filter of like, know, like, and trust, like these were people that I felt like I got to know. I really did like them. And I started to trust the validity of what they do. And then we connect. And one of the more recent ones, his name is Jeff. He runs a marketing agency. They have this really cool AI platform. They're doing all kinds of different marketing for businesses. He and I were connected, and he just reached out and was like, dude, I think we think a lot alike. I think we're similar. I'd love to just get on a call. If it's any value, I'd love to jump on the podcast and share. And I just loved it. We got on the phone, and it was like we were brothers. We knew we hit it off, kind of like you and me when we first got on the phone, Rachel. We just hit it off. And so it was just so cool. And then he came on the podcast and he started one and was like, all right, dude, I might call you and ask questions. And then I got the camera that he uses. And so it's just been fun to collaborate and help and build relationships like that. There's so many stories just like that one.
Now, you mentioned earlier a tactic that Peter Pasternak uses of having in-person events.
Yeah.
And I know, Rachel, you believe also in that. But is there any kind of tips you can share on how to execute an in-person event and to elevate your network, from maybe online to in real life?
Sure.
In order to deepen those relationships and accelerate relationships?
Sure, absolutely. I'll take it from the perspective of not necessarily like going through the nuts and bolts of event execution, because that's not my strong suit, but showing up. How you show up matters. That's just a good law for life. How you show up for your kids, how you show up for your spouse, how you show up to network, how you show up to work, it matters. And so I always like to encourage to show up not looking for what you can get, but for looking for where you can serve. And so I whenever I'm talking to people, I'm always thinking through the lens of, do I know someone that I could connect them to? Is there a way that I could? And what's so cool about the world and how it works, and whether you think it's divine or just something in the ether, however you view it, that value that you give to someone comes back around, and it's amazing. And so I always I've come to your events, Rachel. I've I try to be at different events throughout the week, and I always just go in with that mindset. Go in curious, ask questions, learn about people, share a little bit about who you are, and then look for ways that you can add value. And it's so cool when those connections come back around and start introducing you to people that you can do business with that align. It's more organic that way. It's more relational that way. I have a hard time when I walk into a room and somebody comes up and shoves the business card and this is what I do and we should work together and I want to hear about, and it's disingenuous. It doesn't feel,
it's icky.
Let's
just say it's just
I try
icky.
to avoid that word, but it is.
It's not nice.
Completely. Yeah.
And that's why that doesn't work on LinkedIn either.
Nope.
In the DMs.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. No, I love in-person events.
Yeah.
And, we're doing another, I'll just do a little plug. We're doing another LinkedIn local ATL happy hour in November 13th at
Sweet.
Barn in Dunwoody. And, just being a convener, I think is so fun.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And, getting people in the room together. And like, I've been really into these more relaxed events where it's just like, hey, we're going to this bar, come. Get yourself a drink and talk to cool people.
Yep.
And you never know who you're going to chat. And every single time we host these, somebody tells me, oh, I met this really good person and now we're doing XYZ.
Yep. And if you're, no matter what realm of business you're in, if you're an entrepreneur, solopreneur, you work for a company, you're in sales, you're not in sales, how you present yourself in person and online. See, like when I leave those events, I take the business cards and I look those people up, and I kind of just do I connect with them, and then I kind of feel them out through their online presence. And the ones that are super genuine, it's just so cool because you build this relationship. They know what I'm about. I know what they're about. We're not sitting there trying to just sell to each other. But then what's awesome is something not as sexy as information technology and cybersecurity comes up. They go, oh, Adam Bieber, you should call LogicSpeak. I know somebody. Let me connect you. And that's the really cool thing that happens as a result. It's not the driving force or the goal, but it's one of the byproducts of building relationships and doing it in person in such a neat and cool way.
Yeah, and obviously your online persona should absolutely match the way you're showing up in the real world. It's really, really weird when it doesn't, for sure.
Yeah. I'm sure you've got stories.
I have a lot of stories. I have a lot of stories. But, sometimes it's like you just never know when you strike up a conversation. I was at a networking event last night and, oh, hey, hi, how are you? What do you do? Oh, I'm an accountant. And I was like, oh, my son's an accounting major at Georgia. And he's like, he is? Does he need an internship? I'm like, well, in fact, yes, he's looking for internships, right? So I'm like, amazing, mutually beneficial introduction.
Yep.
You just never know.
Yeah. They may never be a coaching client, but they're going to be a big fan of you. They're going to start to get to know you, your family, and how cool. I mean, I call them circle of influence opportunities where you just are the person that people think about. And I've actually started, I would encourage others to do this. I've started creating, I'm actually going to put it into a spreadsheet because for me, it was like a mental Rolodex of like, who do I know that does what? And who do I trust? Who's in my network that I believe in, trust in, I would do business with if I was ready or able or needed. And so I've started to kind of build like, I know who I'm going to print with. I know who I'm going to ship with. I know who I'm going to, buy a house with and get a loan from and, all these things. And it's just from building relationships, networking, talking to people. And when the time comes, you can either give them direct business or you can point them in the right direction of somebody who needs them.
Yes, my husband would call that the I got a guy for that.
Yes. I used to be one of my favorite things to be able to say, I got it. And my brother actually just texted me the last week, and I can't remember what he asked for. And I wrote back, unfortunately, I do not have a guy for that.
So is there a story you could share about your work at LogicSpeak, maybe that illustrates how you were able to help a company that had a challenge and once they started working with you, you were able to help them get to a new level?
Yeah, sure. So what's really cool about the kind of the clientele that we work with, most companies already have a provider. Most companies are used to working with a third-party IT company that comes in and augments a lot of the tasks that an IT person would do. On the larger company side, sometimes they have that IT person that goes and works on the server or helps people connect to printers, and they work for that company, but they also know that it's too much for that one person to handle, so they augment, and we call that co-managed. So with that being said, a lot of times we work with people that have previous experience with other providers. The Atlanta market, there's a lot of IT providers. It's very saturated. And there's a lot of really good ones. There's some that struggle to really do all the things that they say they do, but there's also a lot of really amazing companies in this area. And sometimes what happens is a company will grow to a certain size and then they will go through the acquisition process, get acquired. I think it's every small business person's dream is to sell and, sail off into the sunset. And so we actually had a recent scenario with a company that they had a really good relationship. Their IT company was very close. That guy got the opportunity to sail off into the sunset. He was involved for a while, and then his kind of terms of sticking around during the transition ended. And when things transitioned, this company went from local provider, really hands-on approach, personal, to national provider, IT team somewhere else, service desk somewhere else, having to fly people out if they want to meet with them. And it just wasn't meeting their business needs. There are businesses that thrive with that model. There's a bunch of them that I know that are doing really well. But for the ones that need that personal connection and personal touch, it was too much change. They went through a backup and disaster recovery issue. They had a server get hacked. Because of the gap in communication, it took them 3 weeks to get their data back from their provider. That should never happen. We put systems in place that you can either spin it up within minutes. That cost extra. There's a whole nother layer of software and hardware that needs to be incorporated, or we can restore within a business day. It took them 3 weeks to get, and we're talking client data. So it was just a monumental. The lady that ran the office has, she's nearing retirement. She said this was the second worst day of my life, which is just crazy. And so we were able to come in. Hey, we're down the road. We can help. Here's what we'll do. And I just kept showing up to the office and sitting with her and talking with them and meeting the team and getting them introduced to our executive staff. And what's so cool is Jason's been leading the company for 20 years. If I tell him, hey, we need to go in person and meet with this person, he will make the time to go and meet with the 5-person, 10-person, 20-person company, sit down and answer questions and help provide reassurances that they need. So it's just been really cool. We've been able to really turn the corner on their perception of our industry, and they just said, please don't sell. And Jason said, it's not on my radar right now. I'll let you know if it does come up, but just a neat experience to be able to kind of flip the script a little bit for them on their current experience and give them a much better one. And I'll just say this, the number one feedback we got from our end of year surveys from our clients was your team is very kind to work with. And that's saying a lot about IT people. We have a genuinely kind, easy to work with team. All the technicians, all of our engineers, they're brilliant, but they're also genuinely good and kind people. And that makes a difference.
That's such a nice compliment.
Yeah, it is.
And it speaks to the culture.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It sure does.
You would not expect that in the, I'm
IT
sure that was a
support.
surprise.
Yeah.
Like kind, you'd think like, oh, brilliant, competent, like,
yep.
Responsive,
Yep.
but they're just like genuinely nice,
genuinely
people.
kind. They're local.
Easy to work
They're
with,
here.
right?
We're not shipping it offshore. Larger companies need to do that. I get it. It's it is a business practice. I'm not here to knock it, but when you can really connect with the person that you're talking to, I mean, it all kind of go back to building relationships. Humans helping humans. Our Jason, who founded LogicSpeak, will often say, "We are people serving people." We're not gonna sit there and just think that we're machines serving machines. That's not how we do things. We are people who serve people.
And like you said, if you're working in a lot of the professional services, we're talking attorneys, accountants.
Yeah.
That's a lot of very highly classified and important
Yes.
information that needs to be secure.
Yeah.
And they're probably not tech savvy, so
Yes, that too.
They're relying on humans to help them solve this problem.
Right.
The going rate for cybercrime is $164 per piece of compromised information. So take one document that has address, phone number, name,
Social security
social
number,
security,
credit card
routing information, credit card information. One document could cost thousands. And then you take a legal document. I unfortunately got divorced 5 years ago. I'm remarried now. But when I went through that process, the stack of papers that I had to go through and read, oh my gosh, if one attorney got hit and only one client's information was compromised, we're talking about thousands, tens of thousands of dollars in not just losses, but fines. And I mean, it really could be catastrophic. And so then when you multiply that over multiple clients, it's so serious and so important to have a strong practice in place, a posture that says we're going to protect and defend from all cybercrime.
Yeah. I mean, and, to reiterate what you said earlier, every organization, no matter how small, is a technology company these days because we all do everything through our technology, through our different platforms,
100%.
right? Even if you're a solopreneur and using QuickBooks, you're a technology company.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome.
Now, if somebody wants to learn more about your IT firm or your consultancy, what are the websites? What's the best way to connect with you?
I think I'm pretty easy to find. My last name is Bieber and spelled just like Justin Bieber. So I would say connect with me on LinkedIn because that's the best way. I'm there most of the time during the day. But if you want to email me directly with LogicSpeak, it's just hello@logicspeak.com. That's a super easy one. And the name of my podcast is Synergetic Culture. That pops up too if you search Spotify and Apple. And then the email for that is adam@synergeticculture.com.
You're
super
an easy man to find.
Yeah.
And the website for LogicSpeak?
Yeah, www.logicspeak.com.
Good stuff. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you guys and hope to do it again soon.
Yes, we loved having you on.
All right. This is Lee Kantor for Rachel Simon. We'll see you all next time on Sandy Springs Business Radio.